All right, so let's get this thing kicked off and got just a couple minutes. You guys see my PowerPoint slide, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so just real quick, this will be our agenda. We'll, we're doing the housekeeping. Belinda's going to report or be our guest speaker on Not Your Daddy's Financials. So we're looking forward to that. And then we'll turn the recording off. And then what we do is we have kind of an open question and answer. Sometimes it becomes a stump the chump type of thing. Just if you have any questions around Power BI that you want the group to help try to answer, we'll take some time to do that. And then we could stay on as long as people want to network or just discuss anything else. We have some links that we want to share about with our DFW Power BI user group. So if you guys have not been here before, welcome. I'm going to put all these links and a couple others in the chat here in just a second. But we use Meetup to schedule all our events. We're in process of moving over to the Power BI community user group. This event was announced there. I think what we're going to do is announce our monthly events there, but our weekly events, we're going to hold off on putting them out there. Right now, that's still, we got to submit a form every time we want to add an event or change something. So it's not as dynamic as Meetup. To keep in touch, we have a Slack community channel. And again, these links I'll push out in chat in just a little bit. So join us there. We recently started putting our recordings over on YouTube. So you can see all the past recordings. I think we got the last 2 months. This will make month 3, I think, on it. And on LinkedIn, we have a group that we announce everything as well. So hopefully be able to connect with us and keep building our user group up. And just to let you know, we have speakers set up for almost every month. I think I have 1 month open. I might have 2, but I got some pretty good speakers coming up that I want to get some things finalized before I announce it. One that is final with it is going to be Reed Havens coming up. I don't remember which month, but he's another MVP that is a visual whiz. He calls himself the Viz Whiz or something like that. So he's got a great YouTube channel. So hopefully you all will join us in the future for that. Other announcements that I wanted to kind of lay out. We have a weekly session on Thursdays, and what the leadership team decided the other day is we're going to continue doing the workout Wednesdays. We went all the way back to week 1 and got people started. So we're going to go to week 4 this coming Thursday in a couple days. So if you want to go out there and do week 4, it's pretty simple. I'm working on setting up a few things so we could share at least the files that I have and other stuff. But this will be our normal Thursday time. And just like at a lot of other things that I'm on, we kind of digress when we are on there. We might find an interesting topic and spend most of the time on that topic rather than finishing out the exercise. We built out a different chart and some complex stacks to do some highlighting. I can't remember what the chart type was. Maybe if Amin comes off, he can remember.
Scatter plot.
Scatter plot, where he had a scenario that he wanted to highlight certain items but still see the rest. And we built that out, and it was kind of fun to do. Speaking of Amin, he has joined our leadership team, so helping set the direction for this user group. So we're glad to have him. A lot of you heard us talk about the community summit coming up October 12th through the 15th, sorry. That'll be in my links that I send out as well. Sheila, who's on here, Belinda, myself, we're all presenting at this summit. We're super excited for it and to get back in person. So hopefully you guys could find some time to join and come down and see us in Houston. And then I'm always sharing my Power BI report. Let's see if I have the right page up that I could bring that up for other upcoming Power BI meetups around the community. This will be in your links as well. This is automatically updated every night. It scans what's out on Meet-In, and you could highlight over it or right click through to get the detail to join different meetups from different groups. And while they're all still virtual, with a lot of them staying that way, I encourage you to do that. 57 events you could attend this month, so a lot of training opportunities. All right, unless anybody has anything else to announce, anything that I forgot or people want to bring up real quick.
You are going to put the link for that Workout Wednesday group you have?
Yeah, that'll be on our meetup page.
Okay.
Go to the meetup one. Right now, I think it just says to be determined on there. I was gonna update it today, but I didn't want to confuse people with the announcements going out. So I'm gonna update it later tonight after our user group.
Okay, because I'm excited about trying to join whenever I can. It's more
Yeah,
fun to learn in a group.
it has been a lot of fun, and the more people that participate, the more fun it'll be. So there's all the links in the chat. Let me stop sharing. And Belinda, you should be able to share and go ahead and take over.
Okay. So let me share. And screen one. All right, you should be able to see my Not Your Daddy's financials.
Yes.
Okay, great. Oh, hi, Fernando. Yay. Another SML dude. Okay. All right. It's my favorite name here, Not Your Daddy's Financials, but I love working on BI with accounting data. It's like, that's what most people do. I know, well, maybe not most, I guess more people get into sales, and if they have any kind of CRM system like Salesforce or Dynamics, they are getting data from there. But there is so much information for a company inside of the financial system. So coming in here is just a perfect place. So let me move on to my next deck here. Let's see my next slide. The next slide is just a little briefly all about me. So as Kevin said, I'm Belinda Allen. I live in Somerville, South Carolina, which is as far outside of Charleston as you can get and still be living in Charleston, South Carolina. So I only lived here for a few years. I lived in New York City for a long time. So I like to joke that I'm bilingual. I speak Yankee and Southern because I'm originally from Georgia. So if you need me to say something in any particular draw between those two, I think I have you covered. Here is my Twitter handle, Ms. Belinda Allen, and that's also my webpage, MsBelindaAllen.com, and a few other things as well. So you could find me that by using that particular handle. I'm a Microsoft MVP. I've been one. I'm just starting my 10th year, so I'm super excited. I'm actually 1 month into my 10th year. For the last 5 years, it's been Power BI, and which is part of what Microsoft calls the data platform, which includes Azure and SQL and all of those other things. And it's in there because of its relationship with SQL Server reporting services, or SQL, SSIS. And the 5 years before that, I was MVP for Microsoft Dynamics GP. And that's part of the business application, which is where the rest of the Power Platform goes. So as a Power BI MVP, we're like this really weird mixture between two different categories in the Microsoft space. And as far as I know, we're the only one like that. So a little bit weird. I'm also a Microsoft certified trainer. I let it lapse for quite a few years in the middle. I was part of the alumni program, but hey, Microsoft says you can count that. So I've got 10 years as a Microsoft certified trainer. So now I'm training on Power BI and the Power Platform. And my hobby is hobbies. I love hobbies. I knit, I crochet, I play the ukulele. I occasionally play tennis with my husband. I sail. I like turning wood into bowls. If it's a hobby, I basically love it. And my latest hobby has been my Saturday morning learning with the rest of the group. So here's the agenda. It's going to be a quick a brief discussion. I encourage interruptions at any point in time. And then we're going to do demo, and then Q&A at the end, but I prefer Q&A for this in the middle. We're a small group, so by all means interrupt. Okay, so this is the traditional financial statement. And yes, I see this is for the year 2010 and 2011, and I refuse to change this because, well, this is an outdated statement. So why not format? So why not have an outdated statement? And in a weird way, if I come in here and grab my laser pointer, you can see there's a drop down here. So there is some capability to do a little bit of interaction here, perhaps look at what makes up the cost of goods sold. But this is still an outdated statement. Most people who get this, what do they first thing they do? They get that ruler out and they start looking at the numbers like this because there's just so much on the paper. It's hard to visualize. And then they go to the bottom line. So my thought is, let's eliminate the complexity of having to use a ruler. And if they want to look at the bottom line, let's just give them the bottom line. But even more so than this, who could read this statement? And this is an important discussion for us to have as Power BI, because we always need to be thinking about not only the UI, the user interface, how it looks and moves and reacts, but the UX, the user experience. And I realize I'm looking at the camera. My camera's not even on. So let me turn my camera on. That's pretty funny. I'm sitting there staring away and see if I can find my camera. Nope, not that. Meeting controls. Now I just got to locate them. All right, I guess the camera. Oh, there we go.
You should see a start video button.
Got it. Yeah, there we go. Okay.
That's you. Now we
Yeah.
see you.
Yeah, it was over on the other screen. Okay. So, but this is an important discussion to have, is the experience that the users get, because especially in something like Power BI, depending on how you build your reports, their jobs may not even require them to look at it. So maybe a manager might not look at the numbers to go in and make a decision if they don't understand the numbers. They might just make the decision. So we want to make sure that their experience is good because we want to have a bigger user adoption rate. So this is something that's incredibly important. My background, right out of college, I was working in the hotel business. I worked at a Hampton Inn, and I was became a hotel general manager. Not long after that, I had a lot of hotel experience working through college. And I remember sitting there when the first financial statement came. I thought, I got this. I was cocky. I was 24 and I thought I could conquer the world. I opened it up. The Hampton Inn at that point was owned by Holiday Corporation, which owned Holiday Inns and Crown Plazas and Embassy Suites and so forth at that time. I'm aging myself. And I opened it up and it was a 50-page financial statement and I wanted to cry. And it was very difficult for me to figure out. So getting an experience that people have that is easy for them to consume data is absolutely critical. Now, this format, I'm not saying it's going away, and I'm not suggesting that you forego doing it. There's a lot of places and things that need this format. Banks need it, lending institutions need it. Some board of directors, maybe you have some compliancy reporting you have to do. That statement is really the only way you could give it to them. And that is not auditors. Thank you. Yes, that is not going away. You got to give it to them looking like this. But for the user perspective, the way that they are working, then that is something entirely different, because that's what I want to talk about today. The goal of how to make reports easier to consume. And I like to call them operational reporting, not that traditional financial reporting. And the cash flow really just leaves me going, ah. And the reason why it does that is because that statement is so darn outdated that even a lot of managers don't know how to read it. I basically, CPAs know how to read it, and some financial institutions. But if you want to see what your cash is doing and where your cash is coming from and where your cash is going, much better to really look in here and look at the detail of the data, because it's available to us now in ways that it's never been available to us before.
Hey, Belinda,
Yeah.
do you even think on your original report that the person that developed it even knows how to read it? So they even know how to QA it or anything?
Um, that's a really good question. I would say, yeah, there are definitely cases where people who build it do not know how to read it. Um, there are, and a good example would be, let's say that you have this mid-market accounting system that I have, and David, who's on the call, he and I have had a long conversation about what makes up the mid-market, because that's the group I work with. And as Mark on the call will attest to, those of us who have worked as partners in the mid-market for accounting system have a really different definition than what it sounds like. It could be someone with one machine that has a lot of complexity, or it could be a giant company that doesn't have a lot of complexity. And in some cases, it could be someone who has both a lot of complexity and a lot of needs, and they're just using a lot of additional pieces built into it. So the SMB basically is, I think of anything between a one-man shop or someone who needs QuickBooks and someone who is a top 1,000 or top 5,000 company. So it's a really big market. Now, most of those people have a partner, an ERP partner, VAR, typically a value-added reseller that comes in and helps them build their statements out or teaches them how to build them out. And I would say that there are a number of people who build financial statements from the partner that do not even really quite understand the meaning of them. But I would say that probably happens more in not being able to read them, maybe about 30–40%. I would say most of them do know how to read them, but very few will stop and offer suggestions. If you gave this statement to me and said, Kevin, and said, hey, Belinda, here's the statement the way I want it, I would look at it and go, what if you, and I would give you some ideas, right? If you gave me the cash flow, honest to goodness, I'd say, just tell me how you want it.
Yeah.
It's just too much.
Yep.
And to make it easier to consume is going to make you want to look at it better, because it's going to make it easier for you to handle. In fact, my personal definition of business intelligence is making informed business decisions with timely and accurate information. Very, very specific, right? I'm going to make decisions based off of what I see. As I mentioned, my start was in the hotel business, and Holiday Corp actually had us do a mini financial statement that was only about 6 lines or so every week, where we had to compare to budget to see if we were on track. And one of the things that we did is we came up with what was the cost of every room that we sold, every room that we rented. What did it cost us? And of course, the more you rent, a lot of cases, the cost will go down, right? Because you don't have to pay the big mortgage on the building anymore, but you do have to have more employees. So it could vary a lot from week to week. So one of the things that I did every Friday, because I worked at a business hotel, so Monday through Thursday, we were completely booked up. And on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we didn't have hardly any business.
Nice.
So on Friday, I would walk up to the front desk and I'd say, you can negotiate down to X dollars. And I knew at that point, I was still making money, and it increased my occupancy, which was better for everything else. It made my cost of room go down, and even with a lesser price, and it was better for me with Holiday Corp because I had higher numbers. Yeah. Were you going to say something, Kevin?
Nope. I was just agreeing with you.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
Cool. Oh, Fernando was saying that definition of BI differs in producing excellent reports with insights and visually appealing to who nobody reads. Oh, Fernando, you're cynic. If you're saying that nobody reads it, that's funny. Yeah, no, you're right. The other reports, like I was showing you, now nobody's going to read that. So let's give them something they could read. Now, when we're talking about financials, and we're literally talking about like the general ledger financial information, which is where I want to focus today on. And I shouldn't call this business 101, I should call it accounting 101, because the chart of accounts is our skeleton, right? It is the skeleton of our financials. if I want to know what's going on and the top of the head, I'm going to be talking about the cranium and things around the cranium and so forth. And I might not call it the cranium, I might call it stuff going on in the head, but the cranium's part of the head, so the foundation is the cranium and so forth. And we need to think about that chart of accounts when we're building our reports, because it is something that's very different. And in doing so, that gives us something to really do filtering and more interaction on and do what ifs and analysis on. So let me focus over here on the cranium. Let me focus on the mandible. Let me focus on the tibia and think about it as a skeleton. And one of the reasons, and this was just, I got this from science.answers.com about our skeleton and what happened if we didn't have one. And look at the words if you don't have one that pop up. It's useless, it's immobile, it's vulnerable, it's exposed, it's damaged, complications, it's death. I mean, amazing things happen if you don't have a skeleton. So keeping your chart of accounts inside of your financial reports is critical to help you be able to do what you have to do. I don't know, I like making weird analogies, and the skeleton with the chart of accounts is definitely one of my favorites. Okay, so here are things we need to think about when we're looking at financial data. And I just put them all on one page because I'm just going to talk through them and then we'll dig into we're almost to the demo point. The chart of account format. You have to understand your chart of account format. Now, really and truly, to be good at data modeling, you do have to understand the data. Is there anyone here who doesn't agree with that? Right, didn't think so. So you have to understand the data, or you have to have someone next to you who understands it so you can ask a lot of questions if you happen to be someone who builds on the data. So look at the chart of account. What does the chart of account represent? Because the chart of account usually means something. They're not just random numbers. There is some compliancy or standards that say if it starts, the main account starts with a 1, it's usually an asset. That does not mean that's always the case. Someone could do something really crazy if they want to. So never make assumptions that they're following accounting format. And so I always have a theory that customers lie. They don't mean to, but they lie. If you ask them, like, what's changed? Nothing. What's changed? Nothing. What's changed? Nothing. And then you get there and you're like, what's this new printer that's in a room all by itself? Oh yeah, that came in yesterday. Oh yeah, that's when our problem started. So you know, you have to really think things through. But you have to think about the chart of account format. What does it represent? Is it in segments? Does each segment have a meaning? How do I define my chart of accounts? How do I know if something is an asset or a liability or sales or so forth? I need to understand that. I also need to understand how I can break down on my reporting, my chart of accounts in sections or subcategories that make sense for me. How do I define sales between cost of goods sales? And there's a lot of reasons for that. And one of them is sometimes you look at it credit minus debit to get a positive number. And sometimes you do debit minus credit to get a positive number. So you have to really understand what your chart of accounts mean and how you define it. You also, and this is something that you miss entirely in that old format. You want to know the source of the journal entry, because we're talking about the journal entry in our data model. That's our fact table. That's what we are looking at and what information we're going to analyze. And the source, or what I call the master record. So the source could be, hey, this came from sales. So the master record is what I call it, would be the customer number. Or this entry came from payable, so the master, or payroll, so the master record is an employee. And then that's a tricky one, and I didn't even put that on here. Do you want to see payroll data in detail or in summary in here? Typically, as a rule, the few times I do work, I don't work with a lot of end users as far as building reports. I mostly do training now, but when I am working with end users, I talk to them about that because I like to aggregate the payroll information and then detail everything else completely. And the reason I like to do that is the detail doesn't show up unless you want to look at payroll information. It just makes life a whole lot easier. And then you don't want someone's name popping up with their paycheck amount as you drill down. Now, I know you can control a lot of the information, and you definitely should, using row level security. or even access to who has what, but just keep that in mind. That's something that you might want to do. You also need to find out, and this is always the case when dealing with transactions from an accounting system, how does it handle voided situations? Now, if voiding is an option, then you need to account for it, even if they say they do not void, because I guarantee you someone by accident will end up voiding something. So much easier to go ahead and control the voiding and then have something appear in there that doesn't belong, because you'll lose a lot of, not only will people be making decisions with the wrong information, but they'll lose confidence. You want to deal with posted versus unposted systems. Now, some systems like QuickBooks do not have a posting feature. Most mid-market packages do, and the posting is where you make an entry and you commit it. Now, some people like to do financials with a what if, and to do that, they'll enter in a transaction in the general ledger and then look at the report with that. So you need to think about, do you want the ability to enable unposted transactions with that as well? And you'll definitely need to identify those. In my sample today, I just left out the unposted. A huge one, beginning balances. How does a system handle beginning balances? And when beginning balances, I also mean year-end entry closes, because those are basically the same question. Some systems like Business Central, Dynamics BC, if any of you are working with that, there is a source. I asked tons of people about how do you know when the general ledger is, and they kept giving me all these answers that didn't work when you were building something in Power BI. It only worked when you were looking in the system. So there is like a source field in there where you could look up, and there is an option where you can exclude the closing entries. And you need to do that if you're in their case, otherwise your numbers are going to all look duplicated. The way it closes out, it takes all of the entries in, basically replicates them some weird way, and you're going to end up with really bad wonky numbers. And so you don't want that. In the case of Dynamics GP, which is the other data set that I work with, the beginning balances, that only the rolling balances go in, the balance is rolling forward. And they go in really weird. They go in with period 0 instead of period 1. They're in the new year, but they're dated the last day of the previous year. So what I do is I go in as part of my data modeling and say, if the period is 0, then I want the transaction date plus 1 day. So it'll be the first day of the new year. And that way my years work right. And that's incredibly important to think about, and something you have to think about. In the case of GP, that would put my beginning balances in the previous year, and it would double all of my balance sheet accounts for that previous year. And then in the new year, I'm just looking at net. I'm not looking at my balances as of right now. So that's something you want to think about. And then what about individuals, the people who approve it? If you have approval processes in place and your system tracks the approver, and who posted it, that might be something that you want to think about as well. And so, because if you're going to look at information, then you might as well really get into the detail and look at it. I had one client in New York City when I was living there, who liked to look at all of the work that users posted by day. He wanted to know how many, the controller wanted to know basically who was posting what volume of transactions. And honestly, I thought, because he told me, he said, I want to see who's working, right? Who's working it daily. And I thought, well, that's kind of micromanaging. And I kept thinking about it, just kept mulling in my brain. And the longer I thought about it, the more I thought, dang, that's really smart, because he is ensuring that people are getting their work in daily. And if you're going to look at operational financials, you might as well look at them every day, instead of just looking at them at the end of the month. Let them work for you. And if you're going to do that, you need to make sure people are doing their work on a regular basis. So I thought that was pretty brilliant. And a lot of times, if somebody keys in something into a submodule like accounts payable, and they haven't posted it and committed it into accounts payable, it, depending on your system, may or may not even show up in the general ledger. So you wouldn't have that information until it got posted. And in some systems, you still have to post it in the general ledger too. So you need to think about all those things. And then finally, the last one is null dates. And you really want to focus on null dates when there's no date that exists. So let's say we're looking at unposted transactions. And one of the fields we're looking at is the day it was actually posted, the system date. Well, no date would exist yet because it's not posted. So how does your accounting system handle that? In the two systems that I work with, BC makes the date 1/1/1753 and GP makes it 1/1/1900. And in both of those cases, if you use DAX to make a calendar, your calendars are either going to start with the year 1753 or the year 1900. And you do not want that in your calendar, because if you try to make a filter that has year, it is going to make really long filter. So evaluate how your system handles null dates. I frequently will then go in, if it makes like 1/1/1900 or 1/1/1753, and as part of my data modeling, I go through and do a replace. Actually, I do it for all dates everywhere, and I'll take those dates and replace it with null so that my auto calendar will not deal with those. And then nor do I have any other kind of weird quirks that can occur. Now, the last thing that I'll look at before we talk about statements specifically for just a moment is the entry date versus the general ledger date. So the general ledger date is what I'm calling it. This is the date that the transaction appears on the financial statement. So if you want something to appear, if you're entering it in right now and you want it, which is August 3rd, yep, and you want it to appear on your July financial statement, you need to date it like 7/31/21. That would be the GL date. But I'm entering it and posting it today, which is 8/3. So I'm looking at that date. And depending on what you're looking at, you might want to look at things by the entry date and not the actual posting date and not the GL date. And cash is a really big deal, because if you're monitoring cash every day, and yesterday I looked at it and today I look at it and the numbers changed a lot. Well, if I only look at what happened on 8/2 and maybe 8/3, it might not explain the difference, because someone might have done a really big transaction from a month ago and I wouldn't have even seen that. So you really want to pay attention to that. Okay, balance sheet. So we know assets, what we own, liabilities, what we owe, and equity is, I say claims by owner, but it's technically net profit, or what the company is worth, basically, right? And so, but those traditional statements, you don't get the detail of AR and you don't get the detail of AP. So you want to include those. Even in the example I showed you, if you look at the drop down by accounts and see everything that happened in between, you're missing what makes up your accounts payable number. I cannot go to the accounts payable detail account and see what makes that up. I have to pull something else entirely. So that's incredibly important. And again, net profit, depending on your system, net profit may not even be in an account there. So you know, if you want to see what makes up net profit and all the detail, then you might want to do something a little more interesting there. Okay. I know I'm going really fast because I want to get to the demo, but all this is really important. Profit and loss statement and what it's meant to reveal. We know, okay, so all these different things, but we need to think about breakdown by departments, projects, and dimensions, and we want to be able to compare to other things in our company. So let's get into the slideshow. I know, right? Long enough. Okay, so let's go to the Not Your Daddy. So what I'm looking at here is, I have 4 queries, basically. And so, and I did model this after GP data somewhat, but just because I have easy access to it. So I have my chart of accounts query. I have that connected, that is my dimension table or my lookup table, connected to my fact table or my data table, which is the general ledger transactions. I also have another fact table of budgets. Now, this is an interesting question here. And the question here is budgets, right? Is this, Kevin, what do you think? Is, in this case, would budgets be a fact table to you or a dimension table?
I would still call it a fact table, because you should be able to roll it up and down into the dates and the account, the chart of account.
I totally agree. I call it a fact table as well. And you could even see in lining it up here. And yeah, you could see I kind of like to put my fact tables on the bottom if I can, and all my dimensions at the top. I agree. I include it as a fact table. And then I created a DAX calendar and have connected my calendar. Ooh, that did not stay. Hang on. Glad I came in here. Ooh, we would have seen a flat line for sure. So let me come in and connect that to my transition date. Come on, transaction date, connect. Oh, I already have it. I didn't think it was there, but it's already there. Okay, so here's my transaction date. All right, so I have the transaction date connected as well. Now I actually have my actual posted date here, and this is not connected to my calendar. And you will notice I call mine a calendar over date, because since the official date field is called date, I didn't want to get it confused between date, the query, and date, the field. So I call my query calendar. That's just a Belinda thing. I have my actual date done a little bit differently here, because if I want to use it, I still can use it. I could even create some other dimensions to it. I'm just not a fond of having multiple date fields out here. Date queries out here, because you could only identify one as the official date source anyhow. And I suppose I could create an active link and then use some DAX to make connections to it, but I find that a little bit difficult to do. Now, I also like to get the bank balance as it is right this moment, not by any particular period of time, as it is right now. And notice it's not connected to anything, because it's always going to look at live, everything that's out there right then and there. So this is basically how I have things lined up in my general ledger transactions. I did put all my measures together, and I have defined some of my measures. So let's take a look at how I've defined these measures. But before we do that, I'm going to come in, and I am going to first just add in a table here, so you can see what it is I added. So I'm going to stretch this across. And in my query, I'm just going to leave it for all years. Why not? Better not. I'm going to make it, let me go to the drop down, and I'm just going to grab 2020. Okay, so I'm going to open up my chart of accounts. And one of the things I added is a field called type. And you can see in my type, I have defined my chart of accounts by asset, liability, sales, below the line, and so forth. Now, these are actually not in order. So let me come in here and sort these in order. I'm going to take my type, and I'm going to sort by, that is sorted by type. Okay, let's check that out again. All right. Oh, below the line's in the wrong place. Okay, but we'll pretend that that's okay. And so now that we have our numbers here, I'm going to open up my general ledger, and I'm going to populate in what I call the net debit. Now, one of the things I like to do is I like to have two fields called net debit and net credit. And if I zoom in on these, you could see basically net debit is just my debit. I created a measure for some of the debit amount, and a measure for the credit, sum of minus credit. The net credit is the exact same thing, but in reverse, credit minus debit. And the difference for those, I'll open up a debit here so you could see what that one looks like. So you could see I'm just getting the debit amount and summing it up, nothing extraordinary there. And the net credit is the reverse of this. And if I put this out here as well, then you're going to see it's exactly the same thing. The difference between these two, though, is that the net credit, if it has a credit balance, then the net credit will show positive and the net debit will show negative. That's the only difference between the two. So now I have all these other accounts. If I drag out assets, I've created measures for each of these categories. And now you can see it's only gathering the assets. And because assets have a debit balance, it is pulling the number from the debit balance. If I were to get liabilities and equity, the same thing would happen here. And now if I get sales and start putting all these in, this is something that I recommend that you strongly do, that you get measures to create categories in this particular format. And let's take a look at what this looks like. So I'm going to come up here. What I'm looking at is because the type is in a different query, it's in my chart of accounts query, I have to put an aggregation with an iteration in, meaning I have to do this for a new summary row by row. I just can't use a measure straight out like I did net debit and net credit. So I'm saying I want you to sum whatever the balance is. And in this case, I'm going in and saying, go to the related query for chart of accounts, and it's getting that from the relationship. And when that type equals assets, then I want to get the net debit. And if it is not equal to assets, I want it to be 0. So likewise, if I go to liability and do the same thing here, you're going to see that this one is looking for liability and equity, but this time it's getting the net credit. So I understand how my accounts work. So now I know, depending on which I want to use, I know how these fields can work for me. So let's go ahead and start building something out here. I'm going to start by doing a little weird Belinda thing. Sorry, I like the background, my page background, to have some little bit of color. I feel like it just visualizes a little better. It doesn't have to be a lot. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to look at, I'm going to skip balance sheet for right now, and I want to look at profit and loss. So what I'm going to do is come up and get a line chart, because if I'm going to look at a statement, if people are only going to look at the bottom line, then I want to make them bottom line easy for them to interpret over a period of time. Okay, so my year right now is 2020. And in this particular case, I'm going to come in, I'm going to drag my sales into the value. And let me go through and get my month and put that in the axis. And there's my sales. And this is really bad, weird data. Sorry about that. I'm going to grab my cost of goods sold, put that in. And I'm going to grab my expenses. Now, I also would like to probably get net profit. And you could get your net profit one of two ways. Now that I've got all my categories, I could either take assets minus liabilities, or I can take my sales minus expense minus my cost of goods sold. Either way, doesn't really matter. So I'm going to come in and add a new measure here for my net profit. So once that comes up, I'll do net profit. And in this case, I'm just going to go assets minus liabilities. Now, typically what I actually like to do, and I'll drag that out here as well. What I actually like to do is I like to create an out of balance one as well, where I'll take the net profit and then subtract. Actually, we could do that now. So I'll come in and do another measure. And I'll call this one out of balance. You never know. Good ERP systems should never have where debits don't equal credits, but you never know. Okay, so I have an out of balance. So I'm going to take my net profit minus my sales minus my cost of goods sold, COGS, minus my expenses. I did not do too many different kinds of categories. Oh, and minus below the line. Okay, so those are all of my categories. So now if I took my out of balance and put that there, I should not see anything. Why do I see something? I do have an out of balance. Ooh, oh, oh, because net profit, interesting.
Is net profit net of expenses?
Oh, no. Yeah, no, it's my calculation. I should have said plus. Is that right? It's my calculation, because if you look, expenses and net profit are the same, but the out of the balance is different. So I need to, minus sales, it should be plus, that's why. Plus, because remember I reversed the signs here. So that should do it. Do the trick. Yeah, now it's flat. My out of balance line is flat. Because I didn't think about the fact that I'm using like a debit version of this and a credit version of that. Does that make sense to everybody why that is? Kind of, sort of. And now
Yeah, it does. It also, it's just kind of interesting that, because like for the consumer, they may or may not be plotting that a whole lot, but for yourself or auditors or something like that, you're building that extra step in. Is that the right interpretation?
yeah, well, actually what I like to do more so than this is if you can, I'm not going to get into it now, but if you just put a simple table out here and then take that out of balance and put it in the table and take that out of balance, put it in the values. There we go. And I probably should have did a matrix so I could put the month across. Okay, so this is my out of balance one. Now, and then if I come back up to this one, I can take that out of the picture. And the interesting thing about doing it like this is because you could hide this if it's zero, like if any of these are zero, or maybe you simply want to make this become a card and keep just the out of balance. And so any month you select is going to filter here. Now let's see, out of balance, I need to format, and that should take care of it. There we go. So now as I select along, but you saw it change there. If there's something out of balance, like you could see there, it went from with brackets around it to no brackets around it. And then you can actually do some things to basically hide this if it's zero. So you could actually do like a DAX formula or something that basically says the difference between your balance is zero or positive, but you could do some things to display this if you want to. When I would build out the reports the long way there, I always put in a line for out of balance, and I would make it a big font that was giant and red. So if they saw it on the screen, they knew they had a balance in somewhere. So there are different things that you can do with this. So I don't know if you can, yeah, you'd have to do a format, use some DAX function to make that hide for you if it was out of balance. But now that I have this, one of the things that I typically do, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing this now, is I'll go into the data colors and I'll set the data colors. Now, this particular out of the box default color theme is not something I particularly like, because I always want my cells to show up as green. And of course you could come in and color them yourself that way so that they will show up as green. That's not really a good color, but I'm not going to change it for right now. But now your cells are green so that you could do something a little bit different. And that way it's a little more attention to as you're focusing along on what you have going on here. Now, one of the things I do like to do then is come up and for each of those categories, create a card visual. And on the card visual, I'm going to grab sales, for example, and put it in here. So here are my sales. So I'll come in and I'll do a little bit of formatting. I'm going to come to the category underneath. I guess I really need to make myself a theme that makes me happy with these, because out of the box, I'm not quite particularly happy with that. Whoops, I'm going to go into data label. I do not want that rounding, and I'm going to set that to like 25. And then what I'm going to do is, because I want it to be easy for the user experience, I'm going to change the background on this from white to not this green color, but a variance of that green color. And then that way, when I'm looking at sales, I know to look for the green when I'm in here. Now, once I do that, I am just simply going to, let's see. Oh, yeah, that's sales. Let me go back into 2021. There we go. So when I look at a particular month, I see my total sales right there. And in this particular case, I'm going to come in and change this one from sales to cost of goods sold. And I'll go through and then change the colors and copy those out so I could see all 4 of these. So no matter where I select on the chart, I can see the numbers that are represented by that particular line. And this is really kind of a really clever way, I think. Someone found this and showed it to me and they're like, oh, this is really cool. Oh yeah, you could put the conditional font there. Yep. But this is a really cool way to be able to look at some of these numbers, because then you could build drill throughs that when you click, you could go in and drill through to the detail. And another thing, then we could take advantage of this little AI piece here, like explain, in this case, the decrease from the period right before that. And if you click on that, and there we go, then you get a little bit of an explanation potentially of what's going on with the decrease. So you could take advantage of a little bit of AI there. Now, while I'm at that, let's see. Did those? I'm gonna.
So just real quick on that page, have you ever been asked, like, if you put the cards across the top and you got all the way back to net profit, do you put the symbols or the arithmetic as like an object where it says like sales minus cost of goods sold minus expenses and then equals net profit, and have all those cards on there?
Where they could see the math that's done with it?
Yeah.
I haven't, but that's a really great idea. And that's a good use for using bookmarks. And Reed's going to blow your socks off next month with bookmarks. So I'm not even going to do that now. But I do like the idea of putting bookmarks that explain things like that. And I'm actually doing that for someone now. So what I'm doing is I'm coming in and whoops, if I go to buttons, there we go. You could put like a little information button. I'm going to take that and put that right there. And maybe that one, you could even change the background color to that. So we'll make that one the dark green, or we can make it the same color if we want to. And then one of the things that we can do, if I had a page that said, let's see, let's just put some text. I'm going to get real fancy here. This is sales. Okay. Not very exciting, but that's page 2. So if I come back over here on this particular, this is like a things to come here. I could come in. I now have an action because it was a button, and I could turn on that action and I could come in and say, I want to go to a specific page and I want that page to be, page number 2. So when you publish it, you could just click on it. In the desktop, you have to hold the control key down. But when I click on it, it explains what I'm looking at. And then, of course, you would also at that point want to put a, we could put a back button up here, and we would want this action to be the back. So when I click on it, it takes me back to this page. So that's something that you could do that really enhances the user experience. I've also seen someone put like this image at the top, and when you click on it, overlays pop up everywhere that explain everything. So you could also put in a shape that looks something like this, if you wanted to. And, I'm not going to get super fancy with it, but I could turn on text here, and then now I can open up and I could say what this means. And then once I do that, then at this particular point, I can make, if I had this button, I could also come in and say, actually, let me, well, you could bookmark it. I'm not going to get into the details because I've got other things I want to show. And Reed does shockingly amazing job at that. So I don't want to get into that.
Yeah,
But
I don't know if that's what he'll get into, but yeah, there's a lot of articles about overlays, like you
Yeah.
said, if others are looking.
And that's a
Great idea.
Yeah. And this is another way you could do it to help explain. And that's an excellent idea because we're trying to make it easy for people to understand what it is they're looking at. And my goal today is not necessarily to show you like lots of different variations of reports. It's more to talk about ideas of things. Now, one of the things I want to do now, though, is I'm going to get back to this line chart. And believe it or not, I'm not a giant fan of line chart. I only typically like it when you're looking at something over a long period of time. I just happen to like the cleanness for a whole financial statement, just being a few lines. I think that's really cool because if you need more than 4 lines, I wouldn't do it this way, but I just love that option. All right, so here I'm going to come in and I'm going to get that net debit amount and put it in values. And did the wrong thing. There we go. Net debit and put it in my values. And okay, cool. And my filter's still on 2020. Good. And then now what I'm going to do is come up to the calendar and get my date and look at my date in the Access. And I'm also going to come into my chart of accounts and I want to get further an additional piece of detail. And I just want to look at my cash accounts. So now that I'm looking at my cash accounts here, I could see my net debit, and I could do this with net profit, by the way, too. But this is looking at cash. Actually, if I did net profit, that would be really interesting, wouldn't it? Let's see if it does better. Let's get net profit. Where are you? There you are. Put it in the value. All right, so here's our net profit. Now, when you're using something where the data is in the Access, like particularly the line chart, you get this analytics piece. And there's some really cool stuff in here. I mean, there's a trend line. You could add a trend line, which is pretty cool. Some of these will not work when you're using the other one. There's a min line, a max line, an average line, but we also have a forecast line. So when I add a forecast, and that one is not going to work for me here. So let me close that up. It does not. Oh, come on. There we go. I'll do it with cash in just a moment. Let's see if anomalies works here. Yeah, okay. So anomalies is a really cool thing. This is one of the relatively new features. And it actually works very similar to forecast, in which it tries to predict using AI, artificial intelligence, to determine based on your data what expected value should be for that date. And it gives it a range. So the higher the sensitivity to it, the more you're going to have. And the lower the sensitivity, the fewer you're going to have, because that range will either shrink up or it gets much larger. So if I get much less sensitive, I should end up with a lot. And I was trying to get enough that you'd see the lines, but I guess you're not going to be able to see them here. But you could see the expected range. It's really kind of small. The range there is really kind of tiny. The expected range is between 1449 and, or that's the expected value. And the range is only, what is that? $7,000 or $700, no, $60 or $70, not very much at all. But in any event, I fell outside the range. And so because of that, I could take advantage of the anomaly detection. And if I just click on it, it helps again give me some explanations as to what's going on in the system, right? What is going on with my data? It tries to help me find the differences. And here I could actually see, ooh, there's a big discrepancy on the 4/12 date. And anyone who knows GP knows that that's the date where most transactions are entered. So that makes perfect sense to us, but this is a really cool feature. Now, if I turn this off, because it doesn't work with the forecast, and I come back in, and instead of net profit, I'm going to get that net debit and put that in values. And I'm going to just look at cash. Now I should be able to come in and see a forecast here. And now here's what that guide would look like. So I can go out a certain number of points and I could have this confidence interval. So you could do a little bit of prediction to where my cash is expected to go. In this particular case, let me go in and get months. And let me just get 2 months. That might be a little better. There we go. So now I'm only looking at 2 months ahead. And maybe I want to increase my confidence. Oh, let's go smaller. So now I could look and see what that upper bound and that lower bound is and what the forecast actually is. So you've literally got a forecasted number right there for you. Not good for my cash because it's expected to be negative, but still, it's a really cool feature being able to see that kind of information as you're going along. Love that.
Belinda,
Mhm.
Fernando put something in the chat about you could also use subscriptions to alert users when boundaries are crossed, right?
Yeah.
I think that does work right when you publish to the service.
Yeah. Okay.
And then, yeah.
You know what? I'm going to play with that, Fernando. That'd be fun for some Saturday. Our list for Saturdays is like this long and our time is like that long. So, yeah, there's a lot of really cool alerts you can put in there that even make it a little more valuable too. But this is something that not enough people are taking advantage of. Now, one more thing I do want to show you here as we go through, let me come back in and duplicate my page again. This is a combination of cash flow and general ledger information. And typically, I'm going to go ahead and just pull in a clustered bar chart. A lot of times we don't know where to look. And there's some really cool visuals out there for artificial intelligence that help you. As a matter of fact, they're listed right up here at the top. Q&A, great tool. Key influencers, the decomp tree, and the smart narratives. Those are all really amazing things. But one of the things is they may or may not guide me exactly where I want to go. And I like to take a look at my cash because cash could keep us in business even if we have no profit. But with no cash, you are not in business. I don't care how much profit your books say you have. So one of the things that I like to do is I'll come in and I will take that net credit amount, and I'm going to put it in my value. So you can see I use this a lot. And then this time I'm going to come in and put in my category again, filter. Did not want the category there. I want the category on the filter because I just want to get my cash. So this is like a sub of my assets, if you will. And then I'm going to come to my calendar and I'm going to put in the months in my access. And I might even go so far as to select months if I want to. I might get January, February, March. So I've got a quarter here. Okay, so this is, I'm going to even change this name. I'm going to call the name, let's call it changes to cash. Okay, so this is my cash one. Now I'm going to take this and copy this basically 6 times. And now I'm going to be able to do some comparisons of things. And I think this is like really just something so amazing to be able to do. It's really much better in cash flow statement than anything I know of. So I'm going to come to the second one. Now, this time I don't want cash, I want AR. So I'm going to clear my cash, grab accounts receivable. It's still, this one should not be a net credit. It should be a net debit. So I'll change that. And now I'm looking at my AR. So apparently I had nothing going on for, actually, I should have put the month in the off filter. Let me do that. We'll go back to the month in a moment. So now I'd come in and change the title here from changes to cash to changes to AR. So I'm just looking at the net change for these. That's all I'm interested in. So you want to make sure you get rid of beginning balance entries. That's a definite must that you want to do. So I'm not doing that right now, but you get the gist on that one. So this one, I'm going to still net credit. I want to see my cash here. So on this one, I'm going to clear the cash or clear the AR, and I'm going to find my sales and just grab my sales. And now I can see my sales. Now, one thing I could do here, because this is sales, is I could have used my sales category down at the bottom, but that's not going to work for everything. So I'll put my sales in. Now, the interesting thing about this is the directions are going in the same way. So as my sales increase, which means my credit balance is increasing, so does maybe my cash might increase as well, which would be a debit balance. So, oh, actually, that should have been, some of you are probably screaming, what are you doing, Belinda? That should have been a debit, net debit. Okay, and then down here, I would basically do the same thing, but in these cases, I would come in and perhaps clear it out and replace it with AR or AP, which would have a credit balance. And then I'm not going to continue on, but I might do well, I will continue on because I think this one's kind of cool as well. So I'm going to, in here, I'm going to click on this. I'm going to clear this out and I'm going to get both my cost of goods sold and my inventory, because it's entirely, if I'm looking at what I purchased, I could buy something and sell it in the same month. So the purchase of that goods has actually moved from inventory. It moved into inventory, out of inventory, into cost of goods sold, all in the same month. So everything in cost of goods sold comes out of inventory. So I'm trying to capture what was purchased for each particular month. So in this case, I am looking for inventory, and we'll just call it inventory. Well, there we go, inventory. And that should be a debit. So let's get the net debit. And then this last one, I can even get rid of the account category, get rid of net credit, and get my net profit. And so now when I'm looking at this, assuming I've gotten rid of my beginning balances, if I were to go into January, February, and March for 2020, okay, in this case, my cash went down. My AR, however, it went up. So, maybe we weren't getting enough, but my sales went up 3,900. So it looks like all the sales we got for January, our AR just increased. So we weren't collecting anything. That's a problem. That's something I want to look at. So my sales went down 62,000. So I must have spent a lot. Well, my AP went up. So I probably purchased 16,000 times 62,000. So or plus 62,000. That means I purchased a lot. Well, there's some of it, 32,000 in inventory. So the rest went somewhere else. So now I need to focus on my other types of categories. Where did, what my admin expenses, that must have been where my expenses were, or maybe I was paying taxes or something in my balance sheet. So it gives me an idea of where typically I want to work. This should have actually, the title should have been net profit. But being able to do comparisons like this is something that a lot of people don't necessarily think about, because there is no real interaction between these. But to be able to see how one report works in one way versus the other is really kind of cool. And of course, you could always make additional measures for it that do that as well.
So I want to, because Fernando put another question in the chat, but I think this page covers it. So I don't know if he wants to come off and say that, but his question was, what would you suggest to forecast cash flow or to forecast AR minus AP? And it almost seems like what you've done here is just kind of answered things holistically. I don't know, maybe the question's different.
Well, another thing that you could do And this is something that I like to do. One of my favorite, and Mark brought this up at the beginning before we were talking, is this calendar visual. There is a custom visual out there that is a calendar, and it is my favorite free custom visual. And I'm just going to come in and type calendar. I didn't mean to show this to you, but it's really cool. And it is the BeyondSoft calendar. That's my favorite one. So I'm going to quickly add this. And now I will add it into the screen. Now, one of the things you could do is you could create a DAX formula that takes the cash. So I could come in and say if the category was cash, or if well, cash would probably do the trick. And then also I would want to track my AP and my AR and the due date of those, right? So I could also come in and say all of my, so for every date in the past that I actually have cash, then I'm going to also have my calendar of how much money do I expect to receive if people pay exactly on time, how much is due on January 5th. Let's say I'm making up, or we'll do August 15th because that's this month. How much is due on August 15th? Now, how much do I expect to receive if they pay on time on August 15th? And of course, with receivables, you always want to factor in bad debt. So I would do it 95% of that number, for example. And now I know what my expected net, if it happens exactly on that due date, is for August 15th. So I could literally take my account balance and keep rolling, take my current cash and subtract any payables I expect to pay based on due date, and add in any receivables I expect to get based on due date. And I could come up with a cash flow that particular way. Yep, KPIs, as David is saying out there. And that is something that you definitely can do, and it works beautifully. It gives you a great way of being able to see things. You might even want to then at that point have a matrix that shows, if you factor out cost of goods sold, then you might want to have like, what's the cost of goods sold that is listed there as well. Now, for those, you don't want to look directly in the GL accounts. You want to go to those particular areas. Look at the actual accounts payable and the actual accounts receivable in order to be able to get that detail, just like I had the actual cash account listed there. So that's something that you would want to do there. But let me populate this real fast. I'm going to come in, my cash is a debit balance. So I'm going to put in a debit measure data field. And then on my date, I'm going to grab my date from my calendar, populate that. Couple things that I like to do. I'm going to not use the right zoom. Okay. I'm going to go into format. A couple things that I like to change. The first one is the fonts are way too small. And even though my glasses are cool, they're not great for everything. So I'm going to increase the font size of the calendar and the data label. So you can see that 0 right there, much easier to read. Okay, did that. Next thing I'm going to do is open up the data colors, and I'm going to turn on the diverging colors for gradient. I'm going to set my minimum colors. This is where I have the least amount of cash coming in, to that light red. The middle will be light yellow, and the maximum will be, I've got to go find a green right there. Okay, will be green. And you could also enter in some values for there. Now that I've done that, zoom back out. So there is January. Oh, and another thing I like to do, by the way, is I'm going to put this filter on this page where I could see my fiscal periods. So not only do I have the year and the month, but I also set my periods. Ooh, I'm getting y'all drunk. Sorry. It's almost happy hour. So you could see the year, the fiscal year dash, and the fiscal period there. There are a lot of times where you're going to want to look at data that's rolling, like a rolling 12 months. And if you do that, you do not want to use the month like January, because it will not appear right. So in that particular case, you'd want to use something, a period like this, so that if you're looking at if you're on a calendar year and you're looking at August 1st, 2020 to August 1st or July 31st, 2021, it'll have the periods there instead. So now that I've done that, I could come in and select a more interesting, I think, let's go to 2021. Well, not really seeing it. Oh, I didn't put my filter on the page. Of course, my debits equal my credits. This is why this is this way. So I need to get that category. And I know someone there was yelling, Belinda, you didn't filter. Cash. There we go. So now when I'm looking at this, I'm seeing things a lot differently. I have multiple days selected. That is no good. There we go. All right, so now I can tell where I'm pulling, where my cash is coming from. Looks like the 21st, or it looks like Wednesday, maybe payables day. If I were looking at this, I would say you do one big accounts payable run once a month. You do smaller runs sporadically, right? I would also say you probably only check your lockbox once, maybe twice a week because of the way the numbers are populating. But this is another interesting thing that you can do. And if you change the numbers so that you're not looking at just the actual numbers, you could create your own measure, because this is the measure that looks at the forecast of those other things as well. Oh, and who wrote that? Oh, Fernando, making a little more.
Yeah, Fernando giving you all kinds of cheering section. He's your cheering section in the chat. Yay!
Every time you come on Saturday, Fernando, I start singing this song, Fernando. Okay. Obviously I'm not a singer. All right. So I love this. One more thing I want to show you, because I am way over on time, and I will use my last page here. I want to spend a little bit of time on, do you guys want to see cool matrix stuff, or do you want to see a paid visual that does accounts or does the old traditional looking financial statements? Kevin?
Everybody in the chat, real quick. What do you want to see?
Matrix.
All right, matrix.
Okay. Yeah, the other one is paid, so it's something you have to pay for. But this one, okay, matrix. Good call. All right. So what I'm going to do here on my matrix is I'm going to come in and let me go to the collapse these up just to make it easier. I'm going to take. That's still a little hard to read. I'm going to take my. I'm going to take my type. And I'm going to put that in rows. And I just want profit and loss line. So I'm also going to come in and take my posting type and just select profit and loss accounts. So I have my sales below the line, cost of goods sold and expense. And I got my numbers screwy. The below the line obviously should be below expenses here. Okay. So I'm just going to create something that you could do that helps you look at your numbers. And so let's go into the general ledger transactions. I'm going to take my debits, and my credits and put them into the values. Now, if you only have one, in some systems like BC, they have a debit column, a credit column, and an amount column where it nets it out for you. And I know that takes up less space in your data model, but I don't like it. Unless you create some kind of matrix and then you are a measure, and then you always have to do a measure with iterations so you get the detail. I like being able to see the debits and the credits when I'm looking at the detail like this, because this is how it was actually entered. The net of them, if I came in and then put net debit after them, it's just going to be obviously the debits minus the credits. So I could see that. So that all looks well and fine. But now I have these category types here. Now I'm going to come in and I'm going to take the main categories and put them in. So if I were to open up, let's say expenses, I could see these subcategories that are listed here. And then I could even go a step further and take my account number and then open up an account number here. And we have a lot going on here. So what I want to do with this is I want to, let me make the grid a little bigger. what I want to do with this is polish it up and do some things that I think are a little bit fun with this. Okay, so the first thing I like to do is I prefer for things not to be stepped like this. I prefer like the outline mode. And most of you know how to do this, where you go into the format and you go into the row header and you turn off the step layout. And now we have these columns here. So if I were to open this up, it's just going to create another column for me, and I can still do whatever else I want to do. Okay, that's cool. Right. So this is my account number here. And by the way, I normally prefer to, if my account number is short, like if you only have a 4-digit account number and you're using other things for dimensions or departments or so forth, I prefer to have that account number dash and the account name after it. I think it's just a little more information, but most people don't understand the account number. They just know the account name usually, unless they have to code things. So think about that. What works best for your company? Okay, we still have a lot of totals and things are a little bit junky here. So not particularly keen on what I'm looking at so far. So what I want to do now, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here and work at the same time. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the grand total, because we got a grand total, and I could put a little bit of background color on here if I want to. For my grand total, I'll use the green, because hopefully that means it's money coming in, and I'm going to apply it to the label. So now you notice my grand total has that green line. Notice how it's highlighted in green. That looks nice. Okay, that's just a little fun thing. Okay, now I'm going to go into subtotals, because I got a lot going on with subtotals, including, well, I don't have any column subtotals, so I'm okay there, but I've got a lot of totals for a lot of other things, and it's just a little too much. So what I'm going to do is come down here in my subtotals. I'm in still the subtotal section, and I'm going to tell it I want to create a subtotal per row. Now in my row format, you'll recall I had the type, I had the category, and I had the description. Now, even though we're in subtotals, the type here, this one right here, this label, is actually the grand total. So I'm going to call this well, actually, I'm going to rename it to grand total. It is giving me the total of all of my types. So now that is the grand total. Okay. Or maybe I want to call it net, if I want to call it net, or I don't know. Got the grand total. Now underneath that, in the account category section, this is actually the total of all of the lines that make up the type. So I'm going to call this, oops, come in here. I'm going to call this type, we'll call it total by type. That makes more sense. Okay, so now when I come in, and there we go, there's one, because it's all totaled up, total by type. Now I'm going to collapse up this. Actually, there's my type. This is the total by type. So this is the type column. This is the total for everything that makes up this row. Now I'm going to come back in one more time. And then I have my category total. And I'm going to come in, and the last one, let's see, is that all I had? Yeah, I guess that's all I had. Okay. Yes, that's right. Because if I open this one up, there's that particular line. This is my account description line. I do not need to total that. Oh, so I have this total, which is my account category total. So why is that not? Sorry, got to turn that off so I can see what I'm looking at.
I think that showed up when you actually expanded it. Expanded again, and I think I saw the pane change.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and now so now you could change it to whether you want it on or off now.
Okay. Oh, okay. So here, oh, yes, I had to have it open. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So here's the description total, and this one would be total by category. Okay. Thank you. I had to turn that on. So now I have all of these different subcategories in here that the subtotals now are a little bit easier to distinguish and to understand. And as we saw through Belinda's blender, as you zoom down, you don't have to see all those totals all the time. If you open up sales, if you open up expenses, you could see the grand subtotal here, because the reason why you could see it is you no longer see the total line up here. So it's still showing us the line, and you could move the line to above or below, depending on how you want it to be. It might make more sense to put it above. So if I came in and went to the subtotal, one of the options I have is to format it above at the top. And now I know this is strange, but now you'll notice that when I open it up, I can see total by type. I could just literally leave the word total there, because now it's showing me that it belongs to my expenses. So you might want to think about how you want to see that particular information. That's a little bit about formatting that could definitely make it easier to do. There are some conditional formatting. I don't have as much time to get into some of these as I had hoped, but again, you could do the bar formatting and everything. One of the things that I do like to do is, if I, let's see, let me open up sales here. So maybe in my sales account, if I have a credit balance, which is negative, which is not a good thing, maybe I want something additional to happen there. Maybe I want it to, well, no, I'm not going to get into that. I was going to get into a little bit of DAX, but I'll hold off on that and save that for another time, because I am way past my time and I've shown a lot of things that are pretty valuable. But think about how the experience will work. I didn't use drill downs. I'm assuming everyone is comfortable with drill downs, but use drill downs for your report. Think about your data, think about it. And it's very different working with general ledger data than any other data, because we have two numbers to work with, debits and credits. And sometimes if it's negative, it's really supposed to be a positive. And sometimes if it's negative, it's supposed to be a negative. And so create all the visuals you know how to build using the data, but you could do it more easily by creating some of these categories and then doing filters on them that way. So take advantage of your DAX, be thoughtful about the dates, because the dates are critical, and just have fun with it. Yeah, as Fernando says, sometimes debits are good and sometimes debits are bad. Yep.
Well, it was great. I really enjoyed it. I know I learned some stuff from it, so it was great. If anybody wants to come off mute and ask any questions, please feel free to do so. Or if you're shy like Fernando, he likes me to, put words in his mouth. Just type it in the chat and I'll try to say it in a nice way for you.
Belinda, this was really helpful. I'm not in accounting, but just seeing the different ways that you formatted things to make it easier for your users. This was really great.
Well, thanks. I did add this slide in here, and I'm sure anyone who hangs out in Guiding Cube is laughing. Matthew Roche works in the BI team in Power BI, and he always says this about the data modeling: as far upstream as possible and downstream as necessary. This is in there because of the date field. So that's why I was putting that in there. So and he also is the one who inspired me to go purple with my hair. So so yeah,
I think he has that too, right? He
purple. Does. Yeah, his is really purple. Mine just has lavender highlights. So it's a very different purple hair color. But and as Fernando says, it's Roche's maxim. Yep, it's definitely what he says all the time. Any other questions, comments, ideas? Something you have done differently?
Well, I had a question about, you had the sort where the sales were at the top and then the other things flowed like a typical P&L. How do you get that sort? Do you have a underlying sort key there? Or?
I do have an underlying sort key. So notice my type here. I do have it built into my data model. I have a sort type. And because of that, I was able to go in and choose to sort by column. I just did what did I do? Did I delete it?
No, I think you just changed tables.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's exactly what I did. one of the things I did one of my lines wrong, but yes, you definitely always want to have a sort table, and you might even want to go so far. I know this sounds really weird, but you might want to go so far as to build. I will show you. Profit base was the demo piece I was going to show you, and I am going to show you one of his Excel pieces, or maybe I could show you one of mine, but you'll want to get in, and this is one from the free version. I could show you this for sure. Okay. All right, so you might want to create something that looks like this, and you, creating it in Excel is perfectly fine, where you create a report ID. And in this case, we're looking at balances right now. Let me change it to just look at one. Let me come in and, oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Well, anyhow, this is good. So we're looking at a report line, and on report line BS001, the report sub ID, so that might be the line, and they have a subgroup, and they're creating this these particular lines so that they could drag lines out in a particular sort order, and you could use your own sort order doing some of this. And in their case, they even decide when you need to reverse the sign, or could have a sign factor to do a multiplier against, because that's the way their product works. If you're not using their product, I wouldn't do it that way. But to create something similar to this, but where you actually have a line number next to it, so that you can make your data appear in the order in which you want it to appear. So you could really easily just come in and insert a column and say, all right, when I want my cells to appear, this is going to be row 1, row 2, row 3. And my recommendation would be to start at like maybe row 200 and multiply or add in 10 to it or 20 to it. This is something that if you are familiar with, Microsoft has two, they're both being on their way out the door, I feel like, for on-prem products, Management Reporter or FRX, and both of these use the same kind of functionality. So if you want to come in and add a line, you don't have to absolutely renumber everything, but you have this sort order out there, and then that way you can have something that you could sort by. And this is valuable because it is worth giving up the space for this index for sorting, to give it to the users in a format that is consistent with accounting principles than it is to save the space. And because this isn't going to be that big, because you could easily then come in and connect an account to, you could even put an account number in here. This is the account number or the range or the category that fits in here. So it's not going to be something that's very long. This one's only 49 lines long, so it's not that long when the accounting data is significantly longer that they're looking at.
Yeah, I've run into that when I'm trying to match their Security Management Reporter where they have account numbers out of sequence.
Yes. And well, one good thing about this, even if you don't, if you did this as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so forth, and I would like sort them all together, even if you did this, when you come back in here, if this is the only place the source is located in this particular Excel file, you could renumber them, and next time the data refreshes, it'll get the new numbers. But like here, they have a link for the chart of account. So when you have your chart of account master file, oh, actually, this is mine, my data. So I have the chart of account, the account number. So on the chart of account query, I could come in and add what report line it belongs to. So when I use a particular report line from this query, and I come in and say, I want to get the sales, the field report line for just something that is part of report ISS01, then that's what I'm going to end up getting, or whatever the report is. IS is the report ID. So the report ID being IS. So does that make sense on how you could you'd want to do that. It's really critical in here. You do not want to sort alphabetically. You do not want to sort by dollar amount. That is not going to be how people typically will want to see it, that are used to seeing it. Yeah, good question.
Belinda, you mentioned management reporter. Are you familiar with active reporter?
A little bit. And I have to say, they are, their on-prem product is lightning fast. Their on-prem version product is the best I've seen. And then of course, you know, if you use one of those types of products where you're getting your financial statement in like Excel or something like that, then my recommendation is you get your last completed statement and you publish that Excel report so people can consume it in Excel online as part of your group. But Active Reporter is phenomenal. I did help get them started to try to work with something that'll work with Business Central. I don't know if they ever got there or not, but they're good people and their product is really good.
Okay.
You must wear your mask at all.
Anybody else?
Great, Belinda, excellent. This is, for me, the most difficult part is the data model itself, no?
Yeah, the model is difficult. And in this model, you know, even though this is a small data set, there are some really strange things here. And you'll notice that I am definitely someone who is a fan of, trying to print it instead of zooming in on it. See, there we go. There we go. Okay. So in this particular case, I am definitely a fan of creating the groups to separate the dim or the lookups or the fact and the data. And you can see I do count the balance sheet there. So getting it to connect is a pretty big deal. Like in this particular case, my budget did not have the account number there. Now I could have put in the account number, but or that's actually what I did because I hit the table directly. If I'd followed Matthew's suggestion, this happens to be on-prem data, I would have created a new view that would have done that for me. And the more you could put in the view, then the better off you're going to be. But in this case, I went ahead and connected to another table and extracted the account index and brought that in. So that was something that was a little different. And I did the same with the chart of accounts for my categories here. But some of the uniqueness that I did is I took my account number and separated it out. And you got to be careful about doing that because you notice that the department number is 000. And I need to make sure that does not format back to a number, otherwise it'll end up as being 0. So I always come through, you notice how it does that change type automatically. You have to remove that once you duplicate that number. Otherwise, you're going to end up with all zeros and it's not going to work for you. I did take the middle segment and turn that into a whole number so that I could create my category type. And because of that, this data actually had this category here already. But I created a conditional column then. Because the way this account is formatted, this comes in and says, all right. So in this one, I started with the account category because this data set is from GP, and you could have unit accounts, which are things like number of employees, where debit would increase and a credit would increase. You don't have to have debit minus credits. So I immediately took those account numbers and said, if the category contains unit, make it say unit accounts. Otherwise, go to the natural account. If it's less than 2,000, then make it an asset. Now, one of the things I like about doing this is I count my natural accounts only 4 digits long. So unless someone uses letters, which they can do, this is going to cover everything. An account might end up at the wrong space, but it's going to cover absolutely everything. So this is something that I like to do. I have a sneeze teasing me and I sneeze loud, so bear with me if it happens.
Bless you.
Thank you. So this is one way that I like to go in and do it. of course, I understand the account numbers, and that enables me to do it in that particular way. And and then here's where I created my sorting numbers, and you could see, oh yeah, no, the below the line should have been lower. I don't know why that popped it. Oh, because look what I did. What a ding dong, is less than. I didn't do my math right. I was doing that today. Okay. So now I fixed some of my modeling. And then on the chart, on the transactions, this gets a little more interesting because, like in this particular case, this is where I went in and looked at the beginning balance. Like if the period's 0, then if it's not 0, get it from the transaction date. Otherwise, get it from the balance brought forward date. And I created a balance brought forward date using M code. I took the transaction date and just added 1 day to it. So now instead of the balance brought forward being the last day of the previous year, it is now the first day of the new year. And what that's going to enable me to do is, if I look at balances for every single day, if I look at a month to date balance, then it'll be in the correct place. If I only want to look at net change, then I probably should keep my period 0 out here. There's my period 2, and I should keep my period 0. I think I might have got rid of it. I don't know. And then exclude period 0, or do something that indicates it's a beginning balance, so that I can exclude beginning balances, or make it even say, hey, whether or not I want to have included that one. Oh.
Fernando's appreciating going down the rabbit hole on all of this. So.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's any other thing that's a little unique. And here's where I voided to remove voided transactions. I think those are.
Belinda, did you just connect here to sample data in Excel or to an actual ERP accounting system?
I did both actually. I started with, this is looking at Excel files, but the Excel files is looking at, I did a live connection to my GP data. And here's something I did a little more interesting, because this is one. I also have category. And I said, if the sales type, if it came from the sales module, get that master record, so I could see the customer number and the customer name. If it came from purchasing, get the vendor number and the vendor name. Otherwise, that shouldn't say series, that should say description. Oh, I did all kinds of boo-boos. Otherwise, get it from the description. And what that does for me is, if it happens to come from payroll, so did I remove my series there after? Where's that? Yes, I did. Let me delete this one and come back down here. It's small. So if I happen to come in and say, only show me payroll, which remember I said I did not want people to see the detail on. Maybe I'm showing them the detail now, but not necessarily the name. You could see in the master record, I could see the employee's name, but in the general entry reference, or actually the subledger reference, notice it's blank. Because I do not want them to see the individual name of the person. So actually, what I should have probably done, instead of description, I should have got, no, I'll leave description. That's cool. I'll leave it like that. But yes, so this is basic. So yes, it's using real data, but it's not using real-ish data. If you're looking at, thanks, Kevin, if you're still there. Sorry, I'm still going.
No, I'm still here.
Who is that? Oh, Alan had to go. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Alan had to move on.
Okay.
I mean, we don't have people dropping, and so people are engaged. So,
okay,
you know,
so this is the last thing I promise. So, okay. So on my bank balance, one of the things that this happens to be a view in SQL, that I can see my bank balance as it is of right now, but I could also see the last balance I reconciled. And this would be like, if I sat here today on August 3rd and reconciled through July 31st, this was the balance, the banks that I had on July 31st. and the reconciled through date would be July 31st. Now, I use both of these fields. I create a, and let's see, here we go. So I create this subtraction column, which is the bank balance minus the reconciled balance. So now I have the uncleared amount as well. And even more important when you're giving this to people to look at numbers is I take the date it was reconciled through and I age it. I create an aging. And so here's where I created the age. You know, if you just come up to add column and you have a date highlighted under date, you get age, right? So I've got this age here and it gives me the age and duration, which would be day, hours, minutes, and seconds. So I convert it to a whole number and then that becomes the days that are unreconciled. Now here's one where I did null. Oh, and by the way, you could also see where one of these is, nope, not this one. Okay. Yeah, it is. I did, oh, which one is it? Change type, inserted subtraction. Oh yeah, because you can see I have the 1900 here. Where the heck did I do that? Oh, last one, I replaced the value. Okay, so I can see the number of days unreconciled and I see the null here. And you notice the null, the days unreconciled is still basically counting the same, but that's okay. That's actually because where that step is, if I come back, what would I end up with? A null. Okay, so now I have my days unreconciled here. And so then what I like to do is use this. This not only provides a level of confidence for people, but you can really kind of like, this is a great use of using the conditional formatting with the icons as to how long something it's been since it's reconciled. So if it's been reconciled within the last week, then we know we have a high level of confidence that those numbers are indeed correct, right? We know that right away. And I said, but you know, I love this stuff. So I'm just like such a nut, I know. So I'm going to just come in and get all these things, reconciled days, cleared through. I'm just going to select them all. Okay. And not all of them should, oh, did I not get the days? Yeah, the days should not be subtotaled. I know I could turn that off, but I'd have to do it there anyhow. Okay, so here are my days unreconciled. And so now on the days unreconciled, you could come in and create some additional icon formats. And I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to come in and I'm going to change this to is number. Always struggle getting this exactly the way I want. Let's see, is greater than, I'm going to say if it's greater than 30. And I don't know. We'll do that. Then we could use the red icon. I think this is right. I always have to stop and think about how this one would work. And if it's in the last 2 weeks, less than or equal to 29 number, it'll be yellow. If it's greater than 0 or less than or equal to 13, it's green. And so did I get that right?
Putting, you just missed number on 2 of them.
Oh, okay. But you get the gist.
You get the idea.
Yeah. And so now I could quickly, without even having to pay attention to the number, I can see how much value or how much confidence I could put in these numbers. And I probably would want to put it on the other side, but I could determine how much confidence I have in these numbers. These that haven't been reconciled in a while, like why hasn't that been reconciled in 63 days? I don't care if it's a low balance, it should be reconciled much more frequently than that. So I'd want to know a little bit more about that. And then by all means, look at these uncleared numbers. What the heck? I mean, that one is something that you would that would be like a giant red flag. Why has it, if that's the uncleared amount, then we need to be checking out what's going on. Oh, it hasn't been reconciled in 19 days and that much is uncleared. So that's something else. I promise. I
Well, no,
promise.
you
I am
promise
not
up until
gonna-
you get the next question, or I don't want to, if anybody has any other questions, again, I know it's 7:45. I appreciate everybody staying with us, but if there is a question, feel free to ask it now, or otherwise we'll wrap up.
Hopefully this is a quick question. I know she used that calendar visualization. Is there any other visualizations that you like to are a favorite to get beyond what's in the standard Power BI?
I do. That's a good question, because I do not dive in much on using a lot of custom visualizations. I do like, and I'm not going to demo it, but this paid one for financial statements. Where are you? Let me just end my slideshow if I could find the other half of it. There we go.
The Zebra BI?
And the what?
Zebra BI?
The what one? I'm sorry, say that again.
Zebra.
Zebra. No.
Zebra BI.
No, Zebra BI. Yeah, okay. I thought you were saying Power BI. I was thinking, yeah, of course
No,
I'm
it's
using Power
my
BI, Fernando. You know
French.
that. But Zebra BI, no, it's not Zebra. Oh, here it is. I knew it there somewhere. No, this one is profit based, and it's really pretty inexpensive. You have to have a 5 years or license minimum for the paid version, but it's like $5 a user a month for the license. And there is a free version with some limitations, but this is their custom matrix. I mean, look at that. That is pretty darn cool. And look how easy it is to build. I'll quickly build it out. Now, this is the paid version. So keep that in mind, but it's a matrix. So I have rows, columns, and values, just like you're used to. So just like I was showing you before, if you go into the row line and put the row line in, I hope I got the right one. And I want to, let's put in a report in the filter and just get the income statement. And then now I'm going to come in and go to my measures, and I'm going to get the actual. Yep, that was the one I wanted. Okay, cool. And if I wanted to, I could also get last year's numbers. So let me get actual. I think this is oh, we'll get budget. What the heck? One of these is oh, let me get the actual total period and the budget total period. Put them both in here. Okay. So this is our statement. Let me come down here now. Now, right now it looks like any other matrix, right? But in this matrix, when you click on the ellipsis, there is an edit button. And when you edit, there are certain things that you can do. So for example, I have my sales and my other income. I'm going to click on cost of goods sold. Whoops, I'm going to right mouse click on cost of goods sold and add a row before. And I want that row to be total sales. And there's a free version of profit based that you could play with. And the formula, I don't have to use DAX or anything. I'm going to get this row plus that row. And the aggregation for it is going to be a subtotal. Notice it's doing my applied steps. And if I come up into format, I could even tell it how I want it formatted. I'm going to format it like that. And now I can see my dollar sign and everything right next to it. I'm going to go back to the report for a moment and come in and increase the size, because you guys have seen me do that. Whoops. It's under grid, right?
I just want to say, I had no idea a visual could modify the UI essentially that you're presenting. with.
Yeah, yeah,
That's just like, you just blew me away with that.
yeah. Saved the best for last, didn't I? Right? Okay, let's come in and
You're my hero.
am I? Okay. Okay, so let's come back in and I'm just going to give you really lightweight here. Yeah, I think this is really very cool. All right, so we've got this sales here. Now I could even, I'm clicked back on the total sales again. I'm going to also come in and let's see right here. I have some additional things I could put in. I'm going to put in, I want this to be custom one. That'll be a format type that I'm going to use. And then I'm going to right mouse click on payroll, add a row before. And now I'm going to put in gross margin. And this will be my total sales line that I just created minus my cost of goods sold. And also this will be custom one, and I'll select the format. And then down at the bottom, I'm going to just do something small here. Insert a row after total expenses. And I'm going to click on all these. There aren't that many, so I don't mind doing them. And 3, especially since, oh no, that's right. Okay. Social payroll, social cost, especially since I got them wrapping. Twice. So, and their income, interest, and interest income, interest expense. I probably should have subtracted my interest income. And let me get the other financial cost and one more. That's all. And we're going to pretend this is balanced, even if it's not. Okay, so in this one, I'm going to come in and do custom one again and the format. And then now down at the bottom, I'm going to add a row after. Maybe I want a blank row, so I'll add one more row after. And this one will be called net profit loss. And this one will be my gross margin minus my total expenses. And for this one, I want to use, I'll use custom one again. And then I'm going to do an underline. I'm going to do an overline and format that. All right. Now I'm going to do something else too. I'm going to come in and right mouse click on the budget and add a, notice I have conditional formatting and conditional formula, or I'm going to do a formula after. I'm not going to get into anything else here. So I'm going to call this variance and the formula will be actual. Now this is one thing that gets a little tricky because most people will do what they call, you know, is it sometimes, well, is it, you know, is it favorable or unfavorable? Is, you know, is it sales minus budget or is it budget minus actual? I don't know, you got to figure some of those things out. I'm not going to get into a lot of the formatting and break this out, but I do want to show you when I come into the formatting option here, I also have under formatting some additional pieces like the custom style one. So now I could come in and put that in blue. Whoop, I don't want the, I'm going to put the font color in black. I want the background color in light blue and I want it bold. And that's pretty good. All right. So this is licensing thing. So on my copy, they gave me access to everything, but they it's just for use for me to play with. So it's watermarked, but if you try to print the free version, you're going to get this, but for being on the report, because you still, you know, it's still just a great way to see some financial data. And you're right. I mean, some of what you could do is pretty darn cool. If I had made this smaller and stretched out columns a little differently, it would have looked a little bit different, but I wanted to do a little bit of gist. And this is another great example of using that formatting to get things in the order in which you want them to occur, where income taxes falls below payroll, because it would, this is below the income tax is what we call below the line, where payroll tax is part of EBITDA. So the Or, yeah. Anyhow, that's it. I promise I'm done now.
Great.
It's
Thank
late. It's almost bedtime.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, let's go ahead and wrap it up. We really appreciate that, you took all this time and went the extra mile for us. Yes, we are recording. I probably have the recording up on YouTube in a day or two, and I'll send out messages when that is available. Fernando also wants to borrow your slides.
I will,
do you-
I will give you a copy of my slides, Kevin, to post, or to send to everyone who came, if you like. Yep. Happy
That'll-
to do that.
That'll be great. All right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap up. Like I said, normally we would do kind of a question and answer type of thing. But everybody was really engaged, and so it was better to go longer. I am going to go ahead and stop the recording now, but if somebody came here specifically for some type of Q&A, I will give a quick chance for that, but let me stop first.